Hi, my name is David Hartman with the Prosperity Agenda. Welcome to Coaching Up Close, our mini webinar series designed to work some quick tips into your busy schedule to help you improve your coaching skills. First, let me introduce the Prosperity Agenda. For those of you who don't know, the Prosperity Agenda, or TPA as we call it, is a nonprofit that's working to end persistent poverty by focusing on changing the way we think about, build programs for, and coach families under financial stress. Coaching is, of course, a big part of our DNA, and we work with organizations all over the country on their coaching programs. Before we jump in, if you're joining us live, we will have a question and answer session at the end of this webinar. So you can either save your questions toward then, or for maybe better time use, as I'm talking, if something comes to mind, you can type a question into the Q&A box. Just know that we'll address those at the end of the webinar. Now let's get started. Today's session, we're talking about getting into the coaching mindset. So when we talk about getting ready to coach, we're not just talking about making sure we have sort of a game plan and the right tools, right? A lot of jobs you can take on, you can just have to make sure you have your tools laid out and you have a game plan. Coaching is not that simple. So when we talk about coaching, one of the things we really focus on is getting into the right mindset. Mindset is critical to coaching success. Now, when I talk about mindset, really simply, that's just the habits of our mind. That's where our thoughts tend to go, how we tend to frame things, how we tend to make judgments of the world, and what we tend to notice, what stands out to us. One of the things that makes getting into the coaching mindset hard is that I feel like our resting mindset, if you would, our everyday mindset, the one we walk around with and see the world with, is not always very coaching oriented. So just for a little framing, when we talk about the coaching mindset here at the Prosperity Agenda, it means a lot of different things, but there are three hallmarks of the coaching mindset. We talk about being goal-driven, participant-centered, and strengths-based. Now, that's not an exhaustive list, but even looking at those three things, the idea of being goal-driven, participant-centered, and strengths-based, let's apply that to our own life and see how we do, see how well we do at walking around every day with a coaching mindset already in place. Goal-driven, I don't think, if I'm honest, I'm often in the tyranny of the urgent, right? Thinking about the things that need to get done. Maybe my mindset is going toward getting people to like me or win people's approval around me. Weeks and months may go by before I really think about the goals that really animate my life and I think resonate with my values and are really important to me and my family. We can lose weeks and sometimes years not focusing on these things. So we don't always walk around in a very goal-driven state, which is essential to be part of the coaching mindset. We usually talk about being participant-centered, but we often don't center our minds on who we really are, our true self. Where we may be experiencing fear, anxiety, we could be experiencing some ambivalence and behaving in ways that are incongruent with our goals. We often don't focus on that either. And the last element of the coaching mindset that we talk about is being strengths-based. Now, if you're like me, or I think a lot of our clients, what often comes up is a voice inside we call the inner critic. This is that voice that you don't have to summon, it's just there, and it tells you, basically it's a naysayer. It tells you why you can't accomplish things, what could go wrong, why trying something new is a bad idea, maybe you should just give up and stay comfortable and not risk failure. And the reason that this is so antithetical to being strengths-based is because the inner critic often focuses on what we lack and not on what we have, right? The tools at our disposal. So one of my favorite examples of this, I thought, well, that's really a coaching mindset. That's strengths-based. I don't know if you're familiar with a show from the early 2000s called Ed. I don't think a lot of people watched it. It was one of my favorite shows. But there was a scene where there's a husband and wife. They've both just come home from work, and the husband was tasked with getting a gallon of milk. Brings it home, slides it across the kitchen counter to his wife, and his wife looks disgusted, and she says, I wanted skim, I wanted non-fat milk, you got 2%. And this is, I thought, a very strengths-based response. The husband says, why are we focusing on the 2% of the milk I got wrong? Why aren't we focusing on the 98% I got right? I think that's a good strengths-based approach because it wasn't focused on the deficit. It was focusing on what was going well and what was going right. So we fail to coach ourselves, basically, in the coaching mindset. So the coaching mindset can be hard because we are not often goal-driven, centered on how we're truly wired and focusing on our strengths. The other thing that can be a detriment and a distraction is the fact that we're distracted and we have racing thoughts. This can also hamper our efforts to get into the coaching mindset. So distraction and coaching don't go well together. Why is that? Let's just clear one thing up. We're always paying attention, but we're not always aware of what we're paying attention to. We need to make sure in the coaching mindset that our attention is on our client, is in the moment. So a lot of times we're paying attention to things that we're just not aware of. Now that awareness is really, really important because awareness is the fuel that coaching runs on. Let me say more about that. Change never happens unless our clients are aware that something needs to change and aware that something is out of line with their goals or that they're feeling ambivalence about something. They're processing. When I say ambivalence, I mean that ability we have to feel opposing emotions, right? Love and hate, fear and courage about the same stimulus. So that's often what we run into when we try to make change in our lives. And if we're not aware of that, we can't confront it and take a different course of action. So awareness is essential to making a coach go. We need to bring our awareness to lend awareness to the client as they do self-discovery. Now, what do we do? So, we're not very great at adopting a coaching mindset for ourselves often. So we need to work on that, and our thoughts can be scattered and we can get distracted. So what do we do? I have come up very handily with 4 R's. This is meant to help be a mnemonic for you to help remember these things. They're a little bit contrived. I'm just gonna cop to that up front. I'm gonna give you 4 R's that'll help you get into the coaching mindset. The first R is restore order. So when I say restore order, let's start with physical space. Okay, where you work, where you see your clients, where you set up for a session. I like to tell my wife now that I'm internally organized, which basically gives me license to leave messes all over the place because I tell her I know where everything is, therefore it's not chaos. You may feel that way a little bit too, but I will be honest that it's a lot less chaotic when things are moved around and in order. And your client, it may just be completely chaotic. So if we're trying to get into that position of focused attention and awareness, we need to make sure our physical spaces are comfortable and free of clutter and debris. So secondly, we need to make sure that the auditory distractions are to a minimum. Now, I remember going to see a professor at a university where I went, and he was like a big deal. I got a 15-minute meeting with him. May as well have been the president of the United States. That's how it felt, getting a 15-minute meeting with this guy. And the whole time I was there, the whole 15 minutes, he had an email notification that dinged loudly. And I counted after a while. He got 80 emails while I was there. And I was so distracted and so in my head that I was wasting his time that I left that meeting without getting what I needed from those precious 15 minutes. Those distractions remind us of other things, right? We need to make sure we're not sort of leaving and losing attention and distracting our clients from our work. You might also make a to-do list. So this is important. So a lot of times we get distracted. Our bandwidth goes cognitively to trying to remember what we need to do after we're done with the session. We want to go ahead and offload that. So however you make note of those things, put it in your phone, put it on a Post-it, put it in your computer. You need to make sure that you have a way of letting your brain go slack in that area and calling the dogs off and saying, okay, I know I'll remember this. I don't need to actively think about this during the coaching session. And finally, to restore order, you may just need to do some deep breathing. This is good. You can find a lot of apps that will help you. There are some routines online that you can find. If you're having a hard time slowing your brain down, you need to use your body to help slow your brain down. And deep breathing is one of the best ways we know to do that. So go ahead and practice that also before you go into a session. It's good to recenter and refocus. So that was restoring order. The second R, this one's kind of contrived, but I call it regard for the client. This is where you want to make the client as human as possible before they come in. You want to think about them in all their contexts. If you know something about their goals and their hopes and their constraints, try to bring that into the room. And in doing that, you make them more human, you get in touch with them, and you start to get that participant-centered piece down. But you also can check for biases. If things come up in you involuntarily, either sort of fear or just sort of disgust or contempt or just sort of hopelessness for the client, or just sort of thinking, well, they're probably not going to change, a little cynicism. Biases are natural. I'm not here to villainize you for having biases. These are cognitive shortcuts that our brain just kind of creates out of the contexts and cultures that we live in. But we don't want those to operate unchecked, and we need to take a second to sort of see what comes up when we try to bring our client into the room before they actually get there. So finally, when we look at the regard for the client, we also want to be strengths-based, and we want to think in advance. If we know the client, it's probably important to get a couple of their strengths down to kind of prime the pump, right? Before they come in, maybe they're feeling self-defeated. We can buy into that narrative if we're not careful. If we haven't gone and intentionally created a list of a few strengths that we know that they bring, because we're going to be talking about their goals and where they may have gotten a setback or how to plan to go ahead. So please note their strengths too. So that's regard for the client. The third R is reframe anger and aggravation. Now, some of you, we specialize in coaching for social service organizations, and a lot of our clients may come in with a little anger and aggravation. Now, we need to go ahead before we get into a situation where that feels personal or we feel defensive. We need to reframe those things and remember that anger is kind of a secondary or covering emotion, right? It's a little less vulnerable. It feels a little safer to display. And often what is underneath that anger is disappointment, fear, insecurity, a lot of other things that are more vulnerable and somebody may not want to show you. But as a coach, we need to sort of just check and know, okay, this anger isn't personal. It's not about me. And in order to raise awareness, we need to sort of ask questions and sort of try to get at what emotions, what else may be going on that's underneath this. So that's reframing anger and aggravation. And finally, the last R, before you go into any coaching session, I don't think we can do this enough. The last R is remember how change works. Remember, coaches, change is not a linear process, right? It is not just a rocket ride to the top to your goals and dreams. We often love to go to the movies because in 90 minutes, somebody's going to have faced conflict and come out on the other side victorious, right? That's not really how life works. So a lot of stuff comes up, and that's normal. We need to remember that. So ambivalence, right? People feeling opposing emotions about going toward their goals, people acting in incongruent ways with their goals, all that stuff's normal. That's why we're here. It's not anything to get uptight about, and we just need to remind ourselves up front, if we're not seeing the progress and if the client isn't seeing the progress that they would like to see, that this is how change works. So again, go through the 4 R's. First one is restore order. Regard for the client is the second one. Third one, reframe anger and aggravation. And fourth, and finally, remember how change works. If you carry out those 4 R's, they're pretty simple. You can use our Ready to Coach checklist on the website that can also help you as a reminder of getting into the coaching mindset. Those 4 R's are going to take you a long way to maintaining that coaching mindset with your clients. That's it for today. Thank you for watching. Join us next month for more coaching tips and resources, and be sure to stick around for the Q&A portion. And of course, if you have any questions about our coaching training programs or would like to sign up for the next Coaching Up Close mini webinar, visit us at www.theprosperityagenda.com/innovation marketplace. Thank you.